They say big moments don't come with flashing lights or dramatic music. Sometimes they just happen. Quiet, subtle, like a single drop of water that tells you the roof has a leak. That's exactly what it felt like that night. Like one tiny thing had slipped through the cracks, but it changed everything. The rooftop was buzzing with energy. Her firm had gone all out for this party. Open bar, moody lighting, catered hors d'oeuvres that had more syllables than ingredients I could pronounce. I didn't belong there, not really. I work in IT for a manufacturing company, so being surrounded by lawyers and consultants dressed like they stepped out of a magazine ad for luxury watches felt surreal. Brooke, though, she belonged. She was in her element, working the room with that effortless confidence that had drawn me in the first time we met. I remember watching her that night from our corner table, how she laughed at someone's joke, how she placed her hand gently on the arm of a junior partner as she passed him. It was all innocent enough. At least, I told myself it was. We had only been there an hour when she leaned in close and said she needed to find Rachel, her friend from work. "Be right back," she whispered, placing a soft hand on my shoulder. I nodded, and she disappeared into the crowd like a ripple into water. I watched her go, not because I was suspicious, at least not yet, but because I liked seeing her like that. Confident. Admired. I stayed at the table, chatting with some guy named Greg about rising housing costs and why everyone was suddenly buying electric cars. I wasn't really listening. My eyes kept drifting toward the entrance of the bar, where Brooke had vanished. After 15 minutes, I started wondering what was taking her so long. But I didn't panic. Not yet. She returned about 20 minutes later, holding a glass of red wine, looking off. Still beautiful, don't get me wrong. But something was wrong. At first, it was just a vibe. Like the energy around her had shifted. She sat down, brushed her hair behind her ear, and smiled at the table. That's when I saw it, the lipstick. It was smudged on the right side of her mouth. Not in a casual way, like she'd eaten a slider too aggressively. No, it was precise. One-sided. Like someone had kissed her hard. Someone who hadn't considered how long she'd been gone. And then there was the mark. Faint. But it was there, right below her earlobe, tucked under a strand of hair. A red smear that didn't belong. It looked like stubble burn. I'd know. I've had it myself, from rushed kisses and lazy morning affection. I didn't say anything. Not immediately. My brain started doing backflips, rationalizing everything before the panic could settle in. Maybe she had leaned in too close to someone's cheek. Maybe she scratched herself. Maybe I was imagining it. And then the phone lit up. It was like the universe knew I needed one more nudge. One more impossible to ignore sign. She set her phone on the table, screen up. Unusual for her. Brooke always kept it face down, claiming the light distracted her. But this time, for some reason, she didn't. And in that second, the lock screen lit up with a text message. "Where are you?" "I'm waiting." It was there for half a second. She noticed immediately and flipped the phone over so fast it made a soft thump against the glass. My heartbeat stalled. She looked up, caught my eyes, and without missing a beat, smiled and said, "Ugh, that's Josh. Poor guy's been driving around the garage looking for a spot for like half an hour." She said it like it was funny, like it was a moment to bond over. Everyone at the table laughed. Even I chuckled, on autopilot. But inside, something turned cold. It wasn't the text. Not just the text. It was the way she said it. Too casual. Too smooth. Like she had that line prepared, tucked away in a back pocket for just such an emergency. She didn't stammer or pause or double take. It was an instinctive deflection, well-practiced, and perfectly timed. That's when I realized I'd seen it before. Not that exact moment, but moments like it, where she dodged questions with a laugh, brushed things off with a clever quip or a dramatic eye roll. She was good at it. Too good. And I'd always chalked it up to her being charismatic. Charming. Now, it felt like manipulation. I watched her laugh with the others, sipping her wine like nothing was out of place. She leaned against me just enough to seem affectionate, resting her hand lightly on my knee beneath the table. But it felt forced, like she was trying to steer my thoughts away from whatever that message really meant. I tried to play it cool. I didn't ask her anything then, didn't make a scene, but the party suddenly felt a lot colder. I started seeing the whole night differently. Every smile she gave someone across the room, every touch on a colleague's arm, every inside joke I didn't understand. It all started to feel like clues in a story I hadn't realized I was a part of. We stayed for another hour. She was radiant, I'll admit. Laughing with people, tossing her hair, sipping her drink with poise. But I was barely present. My mind kept returning to that message. That smear. That mark. That strange, electric sense that something had just broken between us. And she didn't even realize it yet. When we left the party, she held my arm as we walked to the car. I could smell her perfume, jasmine and vanilla with something sharper underneath. I remember wondering if that scent was masking someone else's cologne. In the car, I drove in silence for a while. She was on her phone, texting, scrolling, smiling at something. Then she turned to me and said, "Did you have fun tonight?" I hesitated. Yeah, I lied. Great view. She nodded, eyes back on her screen. No follow-up. No curiosity. We drove the rest of the way home in silence. And somewhere in that silence, a seed was planted, deep and stubborn. It didn't matter how perfect she looked or how convincing her excuses were. I had seen something I couldn't unsee. And whether I wanted to or not, I knew I'd start digging. It wasn't just about lipstick or a mystery text. It was about instinct, about the way your gut tightens when you realize the person you trust most might be hiding something behind their smile. And maybe the worst part? She made me feel crazy for noticing. But I noticed. And that was the beginning of everything. The next morning, the light coming through our bedroom window felt wrong. I don't know how to explain it. The sun was shining, birds were doing their thing, but everything felt off. Like the universe was politely pretending nothing had happened, even though I couldn't stop thinking about the night before. Brooke was still asleep beside me, one hand curled under her cheek, breathing slow and even. I stared at the ceiling, trying to make sense of the way my stomach had been twisting in knots since the rooftop party. That lipstick, that mark behind her ear, that text, that lie. And the worst part? The way I smiled through it. Laughed even. Nodded along like the good husband. Like the idiot husband. I got up quietly, went downstairs, and made coffee more out of habit than anything else. The kitchen was still, sunlight stretching across the floor, the faint hum of the fridge the only sound. I stood there, mug in hand, and for the first time in a long time, I let myself really think. Not just react. Not just rationalize. Think. And suddenly, all the little moments, the ones I'd shrugged off for months, started coming back like puzzle pieces dumped on a table. Her sudden obsession with the gym. That was the first real shift. Brooke had never been into fitness. She used to laugh at those no-excuses gym memes. We both did. But one day she just signed up for a membership and bought all this expensive athleisure gear. I remember being surprised but happy. Thought maybe she just wanted a new routine. Work's been stressful, she'd said. I need the endorphins. I believed her. Then came the late nights. She started coming home later and later, blaming meetings that ran long or last-minute deadlines. New client, she'd say, tossing her heels in the corner. You wouldn't believe how demanding they are. She always looked exhausted. But not burned out exhausted. More like satisfied. Like someone coming back from something they chose to do, not something they had to. There were the changes in her wardrobe, too. Tighter dresses. Higher heels. Suddenly, even her running to the store, outfits looked runway ready. I teased her about it once. Asked if she was joining a reality show I didn't know about. She just laughed and said, "Can't a girl dress up for herself?" Sure, she could. But Brooke had never been one to care about appearances just for the sake of it. She was practical, clean, classy. This new version of her was polished, curated, designed. Then there was her phone. It used to be something we both left around the house without thinking. Unlocked. No passcode. Now, it was glued to her hand. Always face down. Always locked. If it buzzed, she'd snatch it before I even had a chance to glance. I told myself it was just work. She'd been getting more responsibility. New clients. NDA stuff, maybe. But it wasn't just the phone. It was her. Her energy had shifted. I don't know how else to describe it. The way she moved around me. Like I was a piece of furniture she had to walk around. Her kisses turned routine. Her hugs got shorter. Our conversations grew shallow. Sometimes she'd be staring at her phone mid-sentence while I was talking about my day. It didn't feel like disinterest. It felt like guilt trying to pretend it didn't exist. And there were other things. Little things. Once, I found a receipt for a hotel bar in her coat pocket. When I asked about it, she said it was from a client meeting. They always pick hotel lounges, she said. It's a neutral space. I let it go, because letting it go was easier than believing what I was starting to suspect. A few weeks ago, I found an unopened box of condoms in the back seat of her car. I stared at it for a full minute before picking it up. I still remember how calm her reaction was. "Oh my God," she'd said, laughing. "That's from Rachel's bachelorette thing. One of the girls threw that in as a joke. Totally forgot it was there." I remember forcing a chuckle, telling her she and her friends were insane. We made a joke about it. She kissed my cheek, and I wanted to believe her. Because disbelief is easy when the alternative is devastation. But now, after last night, that box? That wasn't a prank. That wasn't forgotten. That was real. It was all real. And I was the only one pretending it wasn't. I sipped my coffee and stared at the tile floor. My hands were shaking. The truth was obvious now, even if I didn't have the proof yet. The mosaic had been there the whole time. Every excuse. Every late night. Every carefully crafted laugh. They were tiles in a bigger picture I'd been too afraid to put together. The phone buzzed. It was hers. I could hear it vibrating upstairs. I froze. Normally, she'd have it on silent. The buzz must have been from a calendar reminder or maybe a snoozed alarm. But for a second, I imagined going upstairs, unlocking it, reading everything she never meant for me to see. And I knew I couldn't do it. Not yet. Because I didn't just want proof. I wanted clarity. I wanted her to tell me something that would make all this make sense. I wanted her to deny it in a way that would feel real again. I wanted the version of Brooke I fell in love with. The one who used to leave post-it notes on my steering wheel telling me to have a great day, to walk down those stairs and explain away the lipstick, the mark, the text, the distance, everything. But that Brooke was gone. And whoever took her place knew how to cover her tracks. She came downstairs half an hour later, still in her robe, hair messy in a way that looked more artful than accidental. She yawned, kissed my cheek, and asked if we had oat milk. I looked at her and just nodded. The air between us was thick. Or maybe it was just me, trapped in a conversation I wasn't having. "You okay?" she asked. I smiled. "Yeah, just didn't sleep great." She nodded, oblivious or pretending to be. I watched her move around the kitchen, pouring cereal, scrolling her phone. And I realized something. Maybe the most painful realization of all. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't guilty. She was comfortable. Whatever she was doing, she'd convinced herself it was justified. Maybe she thought I'd never know. Maybe she thought I would know and just wouldn't care. Maybe she thought I'd look the other way like I always had. And maybe I would have. But not anymore. Because once the picture starts coming together, you can't just unsee it. You can't go back to pretending the colors don't bleed, that the edges don't match. Once the mosaic of lies starts forming a face, you either destroy it, or you finish the image. And I was done pretending I didn't see what was right in front of me. It happened 2 days after the rooftop party. Just a regular Wednesday. No lightning bolt. No drama. I got out of work early, client meeting was canceled, traffic was light, and I thought maybe I'd surprise Brooke. Take her out for dinner. Maybe break the strange silence that had been growing between us. That's what I told myself, anyway. But if I'm being honest, I think part of me already knew. I just didn't want to admit it until the evidence smacked me in the face. When I pulled into the driveway, her car was already there. Strange. She usually got home late on Wednesdays. Some weekly leadership call, she claimed, always ran long. I remember checking the time. 4:38 p.m. I turned off the engine and just sat there for a second. The house looked normal. Quiet. Still. But there was a tightness in my chest I couldn't explain. I walked up the steps, unlocked the door, and stepped inside. The house smelled different. Not bad. Not even suspicious. Just not like us. There was a faint scent in the air, cologne maybe. Something subtle and expensive. Not mine. I shut the doors softly, listening. Upstairs, I heard the shower running. I froze. Brooke never took showers in the late afternoon. She was a night bath person, always had been. That's what set my pulse racing. Not the sound of water, but the fact that it didn't belong. I moved up the stairs slowly, my heartbeat thudding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I told myself to be rational, to not assume, to not jump to the worst-case scenario. But by now, those worst-case scenarios didn't feel like paranoia. They felt like instincts I should have listened to sooner. At the top of the stairs, I glanced toward the bedroom. The door was open. Inside, the sheets were tangled like someone had thrown them off in a hurry. A black dress, tight, short, absolutely not work-appropriate, was crumpled on the floor. Her bra lay beside it. And then I saw them. Sneakers. Men's sneakers. Not mine. They were big, maybe a size 12. Beat-up white Nikes with dirt on the soles. I stared at them for a full 10 seconds, like maybe if I blinked enough, they'd vanish. But they didn't. They sat there, shameless and still, like proof that didn't need to say anything. I didn't move, didn't shout, didn't kick the bathroom door in or demand answers. I just stood there. Then I turned, walked down the hall to my office, and shut the door behind me. I didn't need to see him. I didn't need to hear excuses or fake apologies or half-baked explanations about things not being what they looked like. I needed clarity. I needed control. And I needed answers that couldn't lie to my face. My office had always been my refuge. Books, a second monitor, a decent desk chair, nothing special. But there was one thing Brooke had forgotten. Months ago, when she was working from home during some firm restructuring, she'd logged into her work account on my desktop, left herself signed in to the shared cloud, claimed she needed more processing power for some legal document compiler. I never logged out for her. And I never said a word about the backup system I'd set up for our family photos and documents. Automatic sync, built into the hard drive, connected to a folder that mirrored certain file paths on the computer. Her user folder was one of them. She didn't know. I clicked over. Her work directory popped up immediately. It looked normal. Folders labeled client drafts, HR_policies, Q4 planning. Except one. Budget 2021. I clicked on it. Inside were dozens of files, PDFs, Word docs, images. Nothing stood out right away, until I found a zip file called trip_archive. I unzipped it. My fingers shook the entire time. The folder expanded. Inside, photos. Dozens. Most were harmless. Scenery, airport lounges, sh*ts of food. But then I found them. Selfies of her in hotel rooms, under soft yellow lighting, in nothing but a towel. A few showed her in bed, eyes dreamy, makeup smeared. Alone at first, then not. He was in them. Tall, olive skin, close-cropped hair, face half-hidden in most sh*ts. But one picture caught him fully. He had his arm around her, both of them laughing at something out of frame. She was in a robe. He was shirtless. His hand rested on her thigh. There was a video, too. I didn't open it. I saw the first frame, just enough to know what it was. I closed the window. Another image caught my eye, one of him holding a handmade sign, smirking at the camera. It read, Best Team Building of the Year. The file name? Final 2. JPG. The irony made my stomach turn. I leaned back in the chair, the room spinning. It wasn't just that she'd cheated. It was how far she'd gone to keep it hidden. Multiple trips. Coordinated lies. A whole second life, preserved in JPEGs and gigabytes. There were **ts too. Text threads, pet names, hotel confirmations, snippets of video calls where she blew kisses to the screen, and she left it all sitting there, in a folder disguised as spreadsheets. The deception wasn't just calculated. It was organized. I sat there in silence for almost an hour. I didn't cry, didn't rage. I just stared at the screen until my eyes burned. My brain wasn't racing anymore. It was quiet, cold, because now I knew. There was no ambiguity. No shadow of a doubt. Brooke wasn't slipping. She wasn't being led astray. She was choosing this. Actively. Repeatedly. And I wasn't just a bystander. I was the buffer zone. The safety net. The cover. How many times had I held her hand, smiled at her coworkers, paid for trips she used to meet him? How many evenings had I heated up leftovers while she claimed to be staying late? How many memories had I been building while she was building this? I closed the files. I didn't delete anything. I copied the entire folder to a private drive and renamed it something she'd never find. Then I logged out. And I sat there, completely still. I thought I'd feel broken. But I didn't. I felt awake. You'd think that kind of betrayal, the kind that shows up in full color, time-stamped and cataloged, would explode something inside you. That you'd scream, throw things, storm into the bathroom, and demand the kind of answers that can't even be spoken. But I didn't do any of that. I didn't say a word. When Brooke emerged from the shower, her wet hair pulled back, wearing nothing but a towel and a fake smile, I looked right at her. And I nodded. Hey, she said casually, walking past me like nothing had happened. Didn't expect you home so early. Client meeting got canceled, I replied, steady as stone. She kissed my cheek. I let her. It wasn't cowardice. It wasn't denial. It was war. See, when you're blindsided, you react. You swing. You fumble around in the dark, trying to hurt back. But when you know, really know, you get quiet. You don't just plan revenge. You prepare survival. That night, after dinner, which she made, humming to herself like a sitcom wife, I cleaned the dishes while she watched some crime show in the living room. I glanced at her reflection in the window, the way she curled her legs under her, sipping wine, like she wasn't living a double life. Like her loyalty hadn't already been sold off room by room in boutique hotels. I could have walked in there and ended it, but I didn't, because I'd already started something else. Months ago, during one of her leadership retreat weekends, now clearly code for something far more in asterisk mate, I'd contacted a divorce attorney. I wasn't sure why at the time, just a gut feeling. Something about the way Brooke was acting had triggered an alarm I couldn't silence. So I met with a lawyer. Hypothetical, I told her. Just in case. Now it wasn't hypothetical. It was strategy. I opened my laptop in the guest bedroom after she went to sleep and logged into a private email account, one I hadn't touched in weeks. There, in the drafts folder, were 3 messages I had saved. One to the attorney, confirming we were moving forward. One to the bank, freezing our joint accounts. One to a holding company I had quietly set up under my cousin's name months prior, asking them to initiate the property transfer we'd drafted. All I had to do was hit send. So I did. Each click was like a fuse being lit, controlled, quiet, precise. Then I went to the safe. Brooke didn't know I had changed the combination. Inside was the envelope I'd been building. Printed copies of emails, *TS, a copy of Final 2, JPG, and a USB drive with every file from that incriminating Budget 2021 folder. I even included a dated backup log to verify that none of it had been tampered with. I labeled the envelope Asset Protection Package. I placed it in my briefcase. From there, it was logistics. The next morning, I called my HR department and arranged to work remotely for the next 2 weeks. Personal family matter, I told them. They didn't ask questions. I moved my most important accounts, email, banking, even my cloud storage, into new passwords she'd never guess. I pulled my name off the utilities, canceled shared subscriptions, rerouted delivery addresses for all personal mail to a P.O. box across town. I started moving out without moving out. She didn't notice. The next few days passed in slow motion. She went about her life as if everything were normal. That's what struck me most. Not the betrayal, not even the secrecy, but the ease with which she lied by default. One night, I caught her texting while she thought I was asleep. She sat on the edge of the bed, giggling softly at her screen. I could see the light from her phone reflecting off the mirror. She was biting her lip, like a teenager sneaking calls past curfew. She didn't know that my phone was connected to our home Wi-Fi router logs. I saw the timestamps. I saw the IP address activity. I knew when she was using WhatsApp instead of regular text. I knew when she deleted a message thread and restarted it in incognito mode. She thought she was being clever. She didn't know I'd already collected everything I needed. 2 nights later, while she was out grabbing drinks with the girls, which now just sounded like a parody of an alibi, I sat in my office with a glass of bourbon and reviewed the finalized documents. The divorce filing was ironclad. No alimony. Full property separation. Her claims to the house and assets were void based on adultery and misuse of joint resources. The photos, the emails, the synced calendar events that double-booked her meetings with spa appointments near the same hotels. I had it all. And then there was the final touch. An email to her, scheduled to send the next morning at 6:45 a.m. The subject line, Asset Reallocation, Pre-DIV Notice. Inside was a PDF. Inside the PDF was a message from my lawyer, a statement of intent to dissolve the marriage, effective immediately, citing evidence of infidelity and concealment of financial behavior. Also inside the message, a request to appear at a mediation office the following week. I hit schedule send, and then I slept better than I had in months. The next morning, she woke up early. I pretended to be asleep. I heard her in the kitchen, the kettle whistling, the clink of her spoon in her coffee cup. She hummed. God, she actually hummed. Then I heard her phone buzz. Silence. Then footsteps. The bedroom door creaked open. I stayed still, breathing deep, like I was in a dream. She didn't say anything, but I heard her pick up her phone again. And then her pacing started. See, Brooke's panic didn't look like most people's. She didn't scream or cry. She paced, like a shark in shallow water, like a chess player trying to find the one move she missed. She didn't wake me. She didn't say a word. She was trying to figure out what I knew and how I knew it, and what I might do next. But the beauty of it was, she was already too late. Everything had already been done. Her access to the finances? Frozen. The house. Legally transferred into the holding company. Shared assets? Removed, protected. Her email? Cut off from shared calendars and digital accounts. All of it handled silently. Strategically. She was still trying to decide which version of the truth to spin, and I had already taken the stage away from her. When I finally got up and walked into the kitchen, she looked at me like I was a stranger. Not angry, not apologetic, just studying me, trying to understand how I'd slipped through the net she'd been weaving behind my back. "Morning," I said, pouring myself coffee. She opened her mouth, then closed it. "Everything okay?" I asked casually. She forced a smile. "Yeah. Weird text from work." I nodded. "Hope it's nothing important." She shrugged, stirring her coffee with just a little too much force. I took a sip and met her eyes. "Big day ahead," I said. She blinked. "For you?" "No," I said, smiling. "For you." The collapse didn't happen all at once. It came in pieces. Little inconveniences. Tiny malfunctions. The kind of everyday problems that normally pass without much thought, until they start stacking, until they don't make sense, until they start to feel targeted. That was the genius of it. She didn't know it yet, but I had taken away everything she'd been standing on, brick by brick. And the best part? I didn't have to lift a finger that morning. I just sat back and let her walk into the consequences like it was a normal day. It started with the coffee shop. She always stopped at this boutique espresso place on the way to the office, claimed their almond milk foam was better than anyone else's. I was still in bed when I heard the front door close behind her. She hadn't said goodbye. Not that it mattered. 15 minutes later, I got a text. From her. "Brooke, hey, do you know if our card is acting weird? Got declined for a $7 latte LOL." I stared at the message. That little LOL at the end was doing overtime. She was nervous, testing the waters, wondering if I'd play dumb. I didn't respond. The joint credit card had been frozen. She still had her personal account, but she hadn't used it in so long she probably didn't remember the login. The thing about building a life together is it only works if both people are building in the same direction. She hadn't been, so I'd taken steps. About an hour later, I checked our shared location tracker. Yes, I still had access to hers. She'd forgotten I was the one who set it up during our trip to the Smokies when she got lost trying to find a hiking trail. It showed her parked at a gas station on the other side of town. Then came another text. "Brooke, debit card isn't working either. I'm going to call the bank." Go ahead, I thought. Let them tell you what you already know but aren't ready to admit. I watched her location pin hover at that station for 20 minutes. Probably sitting in her car, calling the number on the back of the card, listening to hold music while some rep explained that due to flagged account activity, the assets had been temporarily locked. I imagined her pulling the phone away, trying not to scream, trying to figure out how much of this was coincidence. And then, like clockwork, came the next domino. The house. She returned around 11 a.m. I was already gone by then, sitting in a downtown cafe with my laptop, sipping cinnamon coffee while reviewing transfer confirmations. I knew when she'd get there. Knew because I'd scheduled the lease handover precisely 2 hours earlier. She texted first. "Brooke, why won't the garage open? Did you change the code?" Then, "The front door isn't unlocking. What's going on?" And finally, "There's someone inside our house." That one made me pause. She still called it our house, even though the deed was no longer in our names. It now belonged to a holding company managed by my cousin, a corporate veil wrapped tight and legally sound. Brooke hadn't read the fine print on the mortgage title. She didn't know about the revocable trust we'd created years ago and never used, until now. By the time she reached the front door, the new tenant had already been there for an hour. A young woman named Kayla. Friendly, direct, and fully briefed. She'd moved in with a rental agreement signed the day before. Keys in hand. Mail forwarding complete. I heard about what happened next from Kayla later that afternoon. Brooke had pounded on the door, demanding to be let in. She insisted it was her house, that there must be a mistake, that she lived there and just needed to grab a few things. Kayla calmly explained she had just moved in, that she didn't know anything about a Brooke, and that the lease was legally binding. Brooke had lost it. Screamed. Cursed. Accused. Neighbors peeked through blinds. One even came outside and asked if everything was okay. Brooke snapped at him. Eventually, she tried calling me. 5 times. Then she tried my office line. Then she tried emailing me. I answered none of it. Her sixth voicemail was shakier than the first. Her voice trembled. "Please call me back," she said. "I don't understand what's going on. Can we please talk?" I deleted it. Every message that came after sounded more desperate than the last. Her anger was crumbling. Her performance was unraveling. She didn't sound like the woman who had coolly lied to my face. She sounded like someone who'd misplaced the script and realized the scene was no longer hers to control. I logged into the banking portal one more time and confirmed what I already knew. Every shared account was locked. Her access had been removed. Her name no longer authorized. I took another sip of my coffee and checked the tracking app again. Her location was still at the house. Still hovering. Still stuck. By noon, she had resorted to rage texting. "Brooke, what the hell are you doing? Are you serious right now? You can't just shut me out of our life. Brooke, this is insane. This is actually insane. Brooke, call me. Now." She didn't know I'd already transferred her personal line off the family plan. The billing was in my name. The changeover processed at 10:12 a.m. She'd be cut off by sundown. No data. No backup cloud. No voicemail inbox. No access to the digital trail she'd tried so hard to keep hidden. I switched off my phone and leaned back in the cafe chair. There was no satisfaction on my face. No smirk. No victory lap. Just peace. This wasn't revenge. It was escape. Across the street, a man held the door open for a mother pushing a stroller. The wind rustled newspaper boxes. It was a normal day for the world. But for Brooke, it was the day everything she thought she controlled turned to static. She thought she'd get ahead of me. She thought I'd never find out. Or worse, she thought I would find out and still wouldn't do anything. That I'd freeze. Stay? Forgive. Fight for scraps. But I didn't want scraps. I wanted freedom. And now she was the one staring through glass she couldn't open, shouting at a life that no longer belonged to her. That afternoon, she finally sent one last text. It was shorter. No punctuation. No threats. Just one sentence. "You blindsided me." That one made me laugh. Not loud. Just enough. I almost replied. Almost said, "So now you know how it feels."